All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fifth and final Board of Governors series exam prep. I'm Ryan DeGive. I'm the chair for the Cal Member Advancement Committee. With me, we have Rick Narad as well as Grace St. Clair from our Cal committee. And we're lucky to have our sole partner, Mary Lassard, today with us. So today's session will be our last one, as I mentioned. We will go over management and leadership as well as business. And then we'll do some closing comments about the test itself, how to prepare. And then we'll have time for questions if you have any additional questions. So again, here's our members. And Mary will be presenting our topics today. I'll go ahead and turn it over to her.
Yes, thank you. Okay, there's a little bit about me. Let's go to the next slide. We are going to be discussing and reviewing management and leadership. We have slides that we have put together here, just a summary of each sort of topic that is covered within this overarching management and leadership. So I'm not going to read through those, but there are two slides of them. So we are going to jump right into our sample questions. And when we're doing this, just to touch upon the focus we want on reading the question, reading it, forward and backwards, really understanding the question before we start looking at the answers or possible answers in the multiple choice test. And always in multiple choice test taking techniques, we want to work to exclude answers first and then come down to hopefully easier the right answer. But sometimes, you might have two that are kind of on the edge. So then talk through those to come to your final selection of the answer. So with our first sample question, the purpose of capital expenditures committee is, so we're looking at a committee that's focused on capital expenditures. Capital expenditures typically are high dollar expenditures. They can be mainly equipment in an operational world, especially. So, so I'm just looking at a purpose, you could say kind of like with committees that have charters, you want to know what their purpose is. So let's start with answer A, to oversee appointment of competent medical staff to render care for the service area. I'm going to exclude that because that has nothing to do with capital expenditures or committee purpose. So let's go on to B, to appoint an effective governing board based on the wishes of the medical staff. Well, the capital expenditures committee is looking at, what types of capital expenditures they want to budget for in the budgeting process or throughout the year if there are exceptions that need to come up. So it's not dealing with the governing board of an organization or the medical staff. The medical staff may give input into, what type of capital expenditures they want, what type of equipment they want that may be considered a capital expenditure, but it's not the overall purpose to appoint the governing board of an organization of the capital expenditures committee. So I'm going to eliminate B. So to be responsible for evaluating and prioritizing requisitions, so requests for new equipment. That's sounding pretty spot on, but before I select that, I'm going to go to the last option there, D, to implement stakeholder wishes on the future direction the organization should take. No, that implementing stakeholder wishes is not a purpose of a capital expenditures committee. So I am going with C. It looks like I'm looking at our chat and we've got consensus down the board. So Ryan, can you be our Vanna and reveal? Yes, C. Great, great, great. So let's go on to the next question. The U.S. healthcare industry is highly diverse, and to address the ongoing challenges of workforce diversity, an organization should. So the first part of this question is really just a statement that the healthcare industry is highly diverse. So what we're looking at for an answer to this question is really the second part, which is what an organization should do. So, and what that organization should do to address ongoing challenges of workforce diversity. So with that, thinking of that, what an organization should do to diversify. Expand the number A or selection A, expand the market share by adding or enhancing services that target diverse populations. That could be, but I'm not thinking that that is an overall the best answer to diversify your workforce. And it's really just focusing on diverse populations. And we're looking at workforce diversity. So the employees, we want our labor pool to be diverse. So I'm going to eliminate A as an option. Develop a linkage between the marketplace and the workforce that will enhance diverse recruitment, development, and retaining of employees. So saying the organization should link the market and the workforce. I'm not sure if linking your workforce to the market is really going to bring more diversity. It may, to the workforce to actually diversify your workforce. So I'm not going to go with B. Let's see. C. Develop a diversity educational tools available both to the workforce and to the community. Well, that's definitely something that an organization could do to educate their workforce, but we're looking as the question is focused mainly on diversifying the workforce itself. So this would be including recruitment. So, and your talent pool. So let's look here. D, develop and implement workforce policies and management practices, maximize the talent and productivity of employees with diverse background. I am going with D because D directly speaks to, workforce policies. So again, it's getting into the workforce there. And then diverse background, it's talking about your employees having diverse backgrounds. So I'm going with D. What is the answer, Ryan? Yay. Good, good, good. Okay. So let's go on to the next question. Woo, this one looks, it's a huge question here. So let's walk through it. A transformational leader adapts and applies evidence-based leadership in their practice. And the application of evidence-based practice in healthcare management is more challenging compared to the clinical practice setting because. So again, the first part of this question is like a statement, just that's what transformational leaders do. What the question is really focusing on is the application of evidence-based practice in management versus like clinical, your doctors, your nurses, that area of healthcare. So we're looking for comparisons and we're looking as to why that comparison would be challenging. So here, answer A, the culture in healthcare management is much less professionalized, So professionalized, I interpret that as like a workforce that's licensed, such as the clinical workforce. You know, you have MDs are licensed, you have RNs that are licensed, you have LVNs that are licensed, you have other types of providers in healthcare, that clinical providers that all require licensing, nurse practitioners, all those nursing areas. So yes, that is true. Healthcare management, or the culture, is much less professionalized. Less likely you'll see a position posted that requires a license. Much less formal body of knowledge and great diversity among practitioners. So is evidence-based practice in healthcare management more challenging than evidence-based practice in clinical setting, because healthcare management is less professionalized, less formal body of knowledge, and great diversity among practitioners? I'm going to keep that one in mind and move on. It sounds pretty good, but let me go on to the other ones. The decision making in healthcare management is supported by various support systems, such as handbooks, guidelines, making it complicated. I don't know. Evidence-based practice, more complicated because healthcare management has handbooks and guidelines. I'm not going to select that. I don't think that that is the best answer. It may be true that in healthcare management we do have decision making that is supported by policies and procedures and things like that, but I'm not sure it's the best answer. Number C, or selection C, the difference of the context or content of the research evidence from a clinical perspective to a management perspective is non-comparable. Well, I don't think that's the right answer, because the answer is actually asking us, in comparing the two, what makes it challenging. Where's the challenge in evidence-based in management versus evidence-based practice in clinical setting? And the C is just basically saying you can't compare the two. So I don't think that's the best answer either. Let's go down to the last one before we make our final selection. The culture in healthcare management is highly professionalized with strong formal body of knowledge. Well, D is basically saying the opposite of A. And when I think of healthcare management being professionalized, like licensed, like clinical, I would say no. Healthcare management is less likely to have leaders that are licensed than your clinical body, which is their formal body of knowledge is required for their licensure. So my selection for this question is going to be A. I think that is the best answer. So what do we have? Great. Awesome. So I see here in the chat, though, a lot of people thought it was D. And I'm wondering, maybe if anybody wants to chime in from our participants, what was your driving idea as to why the answer was D? Anyone want to talk? No? Okay, that was the previous question.
Yeah, it looks like it might have been the previous question.
Oh,
Then,
in the
yeah, it
chat.
looks like
Got
there's only
it.
one
Okay.
guess for
Thank
this
you,
question.
Ken. I was like, man, why is that happening? Okay, I will be better at knowing where the cutoff is on your little chat stream. Okay, let's go on to 4. We got to get through these questions, and that one was a doozy. I think some of these will be simpler and quicker. An effective emergency disaster preparedness plan includes triaging arriving injured, coordination with other community resources, and a third thing. So we're talking about a plan. Well, hours of operation, I mean, if you're in a disaster, you're not closing or opening. You're probably going to be open 24/7. So I'm not thinking that is the best answer. An active command structure. Yes. Most organizations, when they have different tiers of emergency disasters, they typically always have a central command. So I'm going to keep that one in mind and go next. Payment for hospital personnel. Well, regardless of whether the hospital personnel is doing their regular day job or a hospital shifts into emergency disaster mode, your personnel are going to get paid. Not thinking that that is a necessary thing that would be of the top three things that you would want in your plan, which is what this is focusing on. And then regulatory approval from CMS. Well, the hospital's already uh, uh, accredited with CMS. So I'm not thinking that that is going to be like the third most critical element of an effective emergency disaster plan. I think it's like already in place there. So I'm going with B. Perfect.
Looks
Okay.
like that's the consensus in the chat
Yep,
as well.
exactly. Thank you, Ryan, for keeping me with which one we're doing.
Of course.
So awesome. Go on to the next question. So the next question is, committees are an important management tool primarily because, okay, I think the key in this question is primarily. So you're looking at the primary reason why healthcare leaders use committees. And A, they provide a mechanism for reconciling different opinions and facilitating decision making. That definitely sounds like a great answer, but before we select it, let's look at the other answers just to ensure we've got the right one. They are the only way for providing an intra-staff communications. Well, no, when questions have only, never, always, it's always a red flag. It could be the right answer, but predominantly it usually is not because it's so selective, so limited. C, they keep staff up to date on new professional developments. Well, committees may do that, but again, I'm going back to the question where it says primarily. And I don't think that using committees in management is the primary reason to update new professional developments. A lot of different reasons for using committees. Okay, last but not least, they ensure self-expression and participation by staff. They can do that, of course they can, but with this question, I am focusing again on a tool with that word primarily, and I definitely think that A is the best answer for management using committees. So can you reveal the answer, Ryan?
And it
Yay.
looks like there's
A.
consensus in the chat as well.
Awesome. Okay, let's go on to number 6. Which one of the following statements is in accordance with the principle of delegation? Okay, so we're basically looking at for a definition of delegation. The executive who subscribes to the principles of delegation knows what he or she wants to accomplish and exercises control over the work schedule of subordinates. Well, delegation just requires the releasing of control in many, many aspects to delegate something that an executive would do. So I'm going to say likely that's not the answer. B, an executive explains how he or she wants things done and points out how the subordinate's contribution fits into the overall plan. Well, delegation, when it says once things done, it explains exactly how they want it done. Delegation usually is like they want something accomplished and they're delegating that and leaving that control that decision making of how it's going to be done, more so to the person they're delegating it to. So I'm not thinking that that's the best answer. Let me go here. A successful executive gives instructions, tells subordinates exactly how and in what sequence things should be done. Well, I just explained in ruling out B that the how is usually not part of the delegation as a management tool or leadership tool. So D, in applying the principle of delegation, an executive makes relatively few decisions personally and frames orders, like outlines orders, in broad general terms. I definitely think that that is the best answer to describe the principles of delegating uh, leadership, delegating things. So yes, we have consensus. D, what is the answer, Ryan?
It is D.
D. Awesome. Okay, we're on the second half. Here we go. Which of the following is not an executive office function? Okay, so we've got one word answers here. On some ways that may seem simple, like an easy question. On the other hand, that might be more daunting of a way to answer, but let's see. Control, lead. So we're looking at the wrong answer or the wrong exclusion. Control, lead, support, represent. Well, I did for this question happen to pull up ACHE's definition of a healthcare executive, and it includes or ensure organization has strong strategic, operational, and financial footing to serve the needs of patients, families, and communities. So definitely, I'm looking there. B seems to be a function of the executive healthcare or healthcare executive. Serve as skilled, trained professionals who partner with physicians, nurses, and other clinical and non-clinical professionals to provide care. So I think that that definitely supports C as well. Educate the community about important healthcare issues, and then ensure hospitals and other healthcare organizations serve their communities by providing emergency and ongoing care, as well as accurate and timely information about public threats in a time of crisis. So I think this definition directly from ACHE talks about leading, supporting, and representing. It does nowhere in that definition does it talk about control. So I'm going to go with A as the what should be excluded from an executive office function. Can you let us know what the answer is?
It is
A.
A.
Boop, boop. Okay, moving on. 8. What is the correct order of stages for accomplishing organizational change? So this question is really focusing on an order. So we're going to see these answers maybe with the same 4 things, but in different orders. So really need to focus on organizational change and what order we take organizational change. So A is identifying, planning, implementing, and evaluating. Sounds right on, but before I select it, I'm going to read the other 3 options. Planning, identifying, evaluating, and implementing. No, I think those are putting the horse or the cart before the horse. There I go. We're definitely not evaluating before we're implementing. So I am going to exclude that. C, evaluating, planning, implementing, and then identifying. So that's the exact reverse order of A. And I think that's a reverse of organizational change, of accomplishing that change. So I'm going to go to D and see what D says. Planning, evaluating, identifying, and implementing. Again, you evaluate at the end of your cycle, like your PDCA. I think I'm going with A as the correct order of the stages of organizational change.
It looks
We've
like
got
that's the
consensus,
consensus.
and
Yeah.
what's the answer? A.
Mary, can
Rick.
I comment on this one?
Yes, absolutely, Rick.
I
Chime in.
I personally hate these ones with the lists. They drive me crazy. And by eliminating ones, that obviously makes it easier. But sometimes if you can identify what comes last, if it comes in earlier, you can get rid of it quickly. So evaluating is always going to be the last stage here, right? So if evaluating is not listed as the final one, it's easier to get rid of all of them.
Awesome. Thank you for chiming in. I really appreciate that. Let's go on. We've got two more questions here. I think we're making excellent time. In the healthcare field, the accountability of management is best measured by. So, of course, these answers are going to include ways in which management is held accountable, but we really have to focus in looking at this question of the word best. So let's have that in mind as we survey and read through these options for the answer. A, balance maintained between service quality and operational efficiency. That is sounding really good as a best answer for holding management accountable. Let's see, results shown on the annual expense and income statement. Well, that is certainly a way to hold management accountable, that they are financially being held accountable, but is it the best way? Balance maintained between the physician satisfaction and patient needs. Oh, that is a balancing act I do in clinical operations every single day of my life, is always looking at the physician satisfaction versus the patient needs and the patient satisfaction. But is it that the best way to hold management accountable in the healthcare field? Let's look at the last option, degree to which management's needs are met. Well, that's very inward looking. And I'm going to rule that out as a best measure to hold someone accountable. Usually, accountability has checks and balances within the organization. So I'm going back to that first answer of balance being maintained between the service quality, the care quality, and being operationally efficient, making that budget. And so I'm going with A, and it looks like that's what we've got along our chat. Ryan, can you reveal A? Great. So these are tricky questions. Always want to, a lot of times other selections can be true, but then you have to really zone in on your question and look if there's any keywords like that word best, and then you pick the overall answer. Okay.
And I think there's another word in there that's a little tricky, accountability. Especially when you're
Mhm.
looking at B, it's talking about your annual expenses and income and thinking about it from,
The
budgetary
financial.
perspective. That could be a little confusing too. So
Yeah, exactly.
there's words that help and words that kind of distract.
And the
Yes.
fact that it says best measured doesn't mean it's the way we really do it in our particular organization, because
True.
we may be one that bottom line is the only thing they look at, but is that the best way?
That's a great point.
Okay. On to our last question for this area. The cultural climate of an organization affects its recruiting procedure because, okay, so you're looking at your recruitment and how your organizational culture factors into that recruitment effort. So A, it reduces employee turnover and absenteeism. Well, if you have a strong culture within your organization, it certainly can reduce employee turnover and absenteeism. Morale, those are all things that toxic workplace, all those things. And if that's the climate of your organization, it actually might increase or employee turnover and absenteeism. So I'm not going with A as the best. Organizations seek applicants whose attitudes, values, and goals are consistent with those of the organization. That sounds like an excellent answer to talk about how your workplace culture can affect your recruitment. And let's see, C, applicants who cannot support a given culture will be unwilling to work for that organization. Well, in theory, that that would be great if that happens, but that is not always the case. And sometimes in your recruitment process, it is challenging. I know organizations try very hard with like behavioral questions and interviews and panel interviews and all different kinds of screening of applicants to determine if that applicant mirrors or is aligned with the organization's culture, which, you know, is their values, their mission, their vision. So let's see. Lastly is applicants look only to organizations that portray a positive cultural climate. Yeah, I would hope that applicants look for organizations and want to join organizations that have positive cultures, but that word only is a red flag for me. I think there's lots of things that applicants look at when they're looking to join an organization. So I'm gravitating back to B, and it looks like that's the consensus. It has the values, attitudes, goals consistent with the organization. So that's definitely having the applicant, the recruiting goal of hiring people that are aligned with the organizational goals. So is B the right answer, Ryan? Yes.
And notice
Awesome.
the question asks affects its recruiting. It doesn't say positively or negatively affects
I
it.
know.
And this one actually is a pretty negative one if you're trying to diversify your organization, but guess what? We do it.
Yes, attitudes, values, and goals. Yes, but if you value diversity, that could be a positive there if the organization. So it is a very what's the word? Sort of broad-based, general idea, but yeah, it would be easier if the question asked, does it positively or negatively affect the recruitment process, but it doesn't. So it is a challenging question in that. Let's go on. Oh, do you have any other insight, Richard or
Just,
Ryan?
just that it's really important to note the fact that it doesn't say positive or negative because it's too easy in a question like this to look for something that is implying positive, and it doesn't necessarily have to.
Right, exactly like A. The answer A, reduce employee turnover, absenteeism. Oh yeah, that, you know, you have a good workplace culture. It would be easy if you're reading quickly and going through that you know, select A right off the bat because that's a positive thing that you want. That is a goal of a positive cultural climate in an organization, but that is not the right answer for the way this question is phrased. Okay, we've got another section. So let's go. Oh, Q&A.
Does anybody have any questions about the leadership and management section?
It's one of my favorite sections.
Mary, do you have any just general suggestions of how to prepare for this? I mean, what do you think are the key things people should know? Is it the theories? Is it the application? Is it both?
I think it is a little bit of both. I think management and leadership also involves just a lot of like common sense and thinking, you know, how the best, you know, I'm sure we could read management books till we're blue in the face. And sometimes with management and leadership, uh, there's so many different theories of what, you know, is great management or great leadership, or, you know, you should be a leader, not a manager. It's so many philosophies, Richard. So I do think that it's just thinking to your own experience. And many of us have, if you're applying for your fellowship, you're really have a good experience and background of leaders who do it awesome, and those that maybe are more challenged than others. So I really tend to rely on my lived experience, as well as what I've learned through years of continuing education and things like that within my own organization. Any other thoughts, Ryan, Grace?
No, I agree with you. I think, thinking about your own experience, thinking about, continuing education, books you may have read, just kind of relying on that, the best practice. There's always something out there claiming to be the best way to lead and all of that. Just kind of thinking about those ways in like a general sense more than, maybe
A
as,
specific philosophy or a specific
yeah.
leadership style.
Or as
Yeah,
Rick said, your organization may be focused on specific areas, whereas, other organizations or best practice organizations may be shifted differently. It's kind of thinking about it on a broad sense, I think.
exactly. I do think, yeah, the more generalized approach. Okay, well then let's go 10:40. Let's go on to the next section, which is business. Very close to management and leadership. This is what the managers and the leaders do in the healthcare organization, focus on the business of the organization. So we've given, and again, I'm not going to read through these. I think you all can, but the key knowledge areas that is to help. Those knowledge areas are to help you focus in your preparation for the types of questions, because business is a very broad category. Okay, let's go on to our first sample question. Which of the following is an uncontrollable factor in a marketing plan? So from an organizational standpoint, you're putting together your marketing plan for the next year or 5 years, and what is within your control, the organization's control, and what is not. So that's what we're looking for. Economic environment. That is one thing that we as a healthcare leaders over the community's economic environment, we do not have control of, but we do have control of our budget. We do have control of our personnel. And lastly, the marketing team, this is what we hire marketing professionals to do, is that creativity to market our organization and or services. So I am going with A, which is the uncontrollable factor when we're putting together a marketing plan. It looks like we have consensus there. Ryan, can you just confirm? Yes. So yeah, that's part of the hardest part of marketing plans, putting that together, is forecasting what the economic environment is going to be in the future. So yeah, definitely the uncontrollable factor that we're trying to market for. Okay, the element most critical, key part of the question, to the successful design and implementation of an executive decision support system in a healthcare organization. So we don't really know what that executive decision support system may be specifically, but we want to look for the most critical element to its successful design and implementation. So A, availability of software for updating the database. I mean, that's an important thing, that you have that availability to update whatever decision support system you're using. But as far as the most critical, I'm going to wait. Maintaining data confidentiality. Well, that too is, of course, important, but is it the most critical element to its success? Involvement of top management. That certainly is important, because when you think that of an organization, top management is making those executive decisions. And so if they're the ones that are going to be using the decision support system the most to make those critical decisions for the organization. I'm thinking C is a contender. Availability of network computer equipment. Important, but the most critical to its successful design and implementation, I'm going with C, and it looks like we have consensus as well. Any other thoughts, Richard, Ryan, to add to the answer to this question?
Well, my thought was that A, B, and D are all equal in terms of things
Yeah.
that are part of the system, but there's nothing that made any of the three of them stand out more. And C is definitely not specific to this area, but it's the broadest of the answers as well.
Exactly, exactly. And, a lot to say about, the direction, the decision from the top. And so, just thinking of business, you definitely have to have your senior leaders on board to implementing any kind of decision support system. Okay, let's go on to number 3. What is the fundamental reason for joint ventures between healthcare organizations? Okay, let's go. They are allowed by EMTALA. EMTALA is something completely, that doesn't have to do with when you're talking about joint ventures within 2 different organizations of healthcare. So I'm going to rule out number A. They are formed because they offer legal routes to cooperative efforts. That's looking pretty good as a fundamental reason for joint ventures. C, they are permitted as a means to share clinical and quality advancements. Well, yeah, that's definitely happens in joint ventures, that you share your clinical and quality advancements. But is that the fundamental reason for a joint venture to share? Joint ventures are usually business to drive business, revenue, services that maybe one organization doesn't have and another does, and it's easy. A joint venture is easier than creating a duplicate or competing service with another organization. And then they are created to lower overhead costs. That might happen, but I don't think that's the fundamental reason for a joint venture. And let's see, I am going to go with B. They are formed because they offer legal routes to cooperative efforts. The joint venture is a legal business relationship. So can you tell us what the answer is? B. Yes, and I also pulled a definition of joint venture, which you need to know that definition to answer this question correctly, as a business arrangement that involves 2 or more parties working together to achieve a specific goal. So cooperative efforts, yes, definitely B falls within that definition of a joint venture within any organization, including healthcare. Okay, 4. Question 4. When contracting for services, an organization typically finds the best value when. Okay, so we're looking about services we're contracting, so that may be services that we don't do ourselves within house, and we're looking for a best value. So let's review the possible answers here. The organization creates an internal auditor position to oversee the service. Well, maybe when you do contract with, let's say, contracted services, you definitely want to monitor and make sure that you're getting the best value. I'm not sure that's the best answer, though, for when you're contracting for services. A board member negotiates for discounted services. No, board members are not negotiating contracts. That's not their scope. So let's go on to C. The organization allows the prospective supplier, that's who we're contracting with, to develop the contractual service expectations? Well, it's usually the reverse. It's usually the organization that's contracting with a prospective supplier or vendor that is setting forth those service expectations for the contracted service. So I'm not going to pick C either. There's competition between several suppliers with proven performance and reputation. Okay, so we're going back to an organization typically finds the best value. Well, yes, value always, when there's competition, that is key to getting a best value. And if those competitors for the contract that are vying for your contract, usually that evaluation, that negotiation process includes proven performance and reputation. So reviewing that and selecting the best among several contenders for your service contract. So I'm going with D. And I look over and everyone is in agreement. Awesome. Okay, thank you, Ryan. Let's go on. Okay, when data is scarce, the best method of forecasting is to use. Okay, so we can't use quantitative data analysis, or we don't have a lot of it, but we need to make a decision based on some forecasting analysis. So let's see, computer-based simulation methods. Well, usually computer-based simulation includes quantitative data, and the question is saying we don't really have that. So I'm not thinking that A is the best answer. Time series analysis. Well, maybe, but again, you're thinking of quantitative is scarce. I'm looking for qualitative data because that's usually you're looking at both of those, and then you would, if your quantitative data is scarce, then you may gonna be in a situation where you rely more heavily on qualitative data. So let's see, econometric forecasting.
Econometric.
There you go. Thank you. That was a tongue twister for me, Richard. I guess I'm talking too much. Again, I think that is going to lead more on quantitative. Economics usually deals with more quantitative measures. But I'm looking for forecasting. I'm looking at qualitative techniques. So I am going with D. And I think that qualitative data is, and I looked this up just as a reinforcement of non-numerical data to understand concepts, opinions, or experience. It can be used to gather in-depth insight into a problem or generate new ideas. Whereas quantitative data involves collecting and analyzing numerical data for statistical analysis. So, that is why I ruled out A and C, because that's more numerical based. So is D the correct answer? That's a consensus. Yes, D. Okay.
What I always found interesting, especially, is data has become more of the driver, especially in hospital setting for capacity and everything. I worked a lot in patient flow throughout my career, and, there's qualitative data could be found, people's experience can be brought to the table to kind of really guide a lot of those processes, and the nursing soups, the people involved in, transfers, transports, admits, all of that always had great, information to provide, that would kind of, you would watch it play out. Like they would know that, it's a specific weekend, it's a holiday weekend or something. They knew what kind of beds they were going to need. They knew, what was probably going to come in. They all had that experience, and bringing that qualitative data can really help when you don't have a lot of documented quantitative data, I think.
And I think we can all agree the most opportune situation for forecasting is when you have both. You have the qualitative and the quantitative. They complement each other. They support each other. And that's the best environment for decision forecasting. Unfortunately, that isn't always the case, that you have both. And so that is what this question is getting to as far as business decision making. Okay, let's go on to the next question. Most products and services enter a period of decline. Unless compelling reasons prevail, continuing a declining product or service is costly because, okay, let's look at this question. So we're talking about a service line, a product that we're using, maybe it's a drug, is in a period of decline. So the value is decreasing. It's less effective. Unless there's some compelling reason to continue offering those products and services that are in decline, we measure or look at the cost of offering these declining services, and that's what we're looking at here. What is the cost of continuing? Increased turnover of personnel will occur. It could be, but I'm not sure that's the best answer, the most costly answer here of a declining service or product. Continuation will set an undesirable precedent concerned with maintaining the status quo. So, maybe maintaining the status quo could be a reason that an organization doesn't want to phase out a declining product or service due to its cost to the organization. You're looking at something that's not giving you a profitable revenue over cost expense ratio. So let's see, the program will consume a disproportionate amount of management time and delay the search for a replacement. That's sounding like a pretty good answer to this question, but let me read the last one. The organization will be perceived as being insensitive to the marketplace. Well, it could, because that answer could be true, but is that the most costly to the organization? Is that community perception the most costly to the organization? I don't think so. I think I am going with C, because you're talking about disproportionate amount of management time. And management time can be quantified by, how much are you paying your management level people to focus on something that's in decline, and without taking that same labor expense, and directing it at replacing a declining product or service with something that's going to be profitable for the organization and needed in the community where the demand is. So this is a little bit of supply and demand economics going on in this question. So is it C? Yes. Richard, do you have any thoughts on this business question to add? No? Okay. We can go on to the next question.
No, sorry.
I'm sorry,
I got
Richard?
lost on my computer, but no, I don't.
Okay, good. I just checking. Okay, let's go on to 7. Before submitting a business plan for a new clinical service line to the governing body of the organization, the plan should be developed by. So we're just basically looking at business plan development, that process. How best should that process flow within an organization for something new that is being evaluated by the organization? So recommendations from the finance committee. So the plan should include recommendations from the finance committee on the basis of its estimate of income for the budget year. I mean, yes, we're putting together a business plan for a new clinical service line. Of course, we want to show in that plan that it is forecasted to be financially sound. It's going to make money for the organization and meet the goal of services needed in the community, the demand. But is that the best answer for this question? I'm not thinking it is, but let me read on. The heads of profit centers, considering each center's anticipated revenues and expenses, with the CEO putting it all together. I think it's the last part of this answer that just screams no to me, of a CEO putting together the business plan to, so I'm not going to go with B. I'm going to read on to C. Key executives, after receiving recommendations from the department heads of operating divisions and key physician leaders. So this is where it's actually saying who's going to develop the business plan for a new clinical service line. It's going to be key executives putting together that business plan, and they're putting it together after they have received the recommendations from the heads of the operating divisions, the clinical service lines probably that it involves, and the physician leaders involved within those service lines or adjacent service lines. So I'm thinking that C is a very good answer, but before I select C, I'm going to go and read the last one. The heads of the operating divisions with the CEO putting it all together. That again, usually it's presenting a business plan to the executive committee, to the CEO, not the CEO doing it. So I am going with C. Yes, C sounds better. Let us know, Ryan. Yes, that's the answer. Business plan development, I think, is a crucial topic that if you haven't done one in your regular day jobs or do them, you should brush up on a business plan development for the test. And so this answer definitely reflects that process. Okay. Hospital systems have many customers, in quote. So the first part of the question is just a statement. Of the four mentioned groups of people or organization below, which is least likely to be listed as key targets in a marketing plan? So here we're talking about marketing. So that's the overall topic. And we're looking to see, when we're marketing, what is the least likely group of people that are going to be considered when we're doing a marketing plan. So that's how I read that question. So buyers, no, I think the opposite. People that you're marketing to, who's going to buy your product, that's who you want to market to. So I think that is not the right answer because we're looking for the least likely group. Caregiver exchanges. Well, we're in healthcare, we're targeting patients, and along with those patients are caregivers, whether they be professional or family. So I'm thinking that B is not the least likely group. State government, possibly. How often do we market to governments? Not likely. That's looking like the best answer. And patients, sort of those are the buyers in many cases, or insurance companies, patients buy their healthcare, obtain their healthcare through their insurance. So I am going with C, that as the least likely group that I'm going to consider when putting together a marketing plan as far as who I'm considering as my customer. And it looks like we have consensus among our group this morning. C, yes.
Gary, can I ask a question?
Sure, absolutely.
Targets in a marketing campaign, do we really mean marketing here, or are they really talking about promotion? Because I would agree with you, we don't promote to state government, but we sure consider it, the Medicaid program, et cetera, as one of our targets for our marketing for determining where our patients are coming from.
Could be. I know that term marketing campaign could be a lot, could mean a lot. The government is our customer, as far as you're saying, like with Medi-Cal or Medicaid. Yeah, we could have some marketing, especially if, let's say, the state has delegated um to organizations, competitive in a capitalistic
If you're,
economy.
but if you're determining marketing niches, then government payers are definitely one of your niches. And so where I'm getting confused on this question is whether they mean marketing in a broad sense of determining who your customers are and what your product should be, or do they really mean promotion, which is one tiny part of marketing?
Yeah. Well, it says least likely.
Yeah.
So it's saying that all of these answers are going to be in your marketing plan and being considered. But as far as the least likely group that you're going to target in your marketing or your promotion of your organization, is the state government.
I would have put B just because I have no idea what a caregiver exchange is.
Oh, I think that when I think of caregivers, I think of people that are, exchanges. Exchanges sometimes are considered like organization. They help the exchange of be now I'm getting tongue-tied. I didn't look up the definition directly of caregiver exchange, but from my personal experience, caregivers are very much part of your
Caregiver, yes, caregiver exchange is where I don't know what it is, but
I'm
that's
wondering
okay.
if they mean like staffing agencies, like
Yeah,
ones that you can contract with that, if you're short staffed, they can send you caregivers to help keep operations going. I'm not sure.
yeah,
uh,
staffing, but yeah, I don't know, interesting. I don't think it's a really good question.
it's a
But they
it's a
didn't ask me.
confusing one.
Yeah, they didn't ask me whether it was a good question or not, but I don't like it.
Okay, 9. Let's go into 9. I'm gonna end on time here. Environmental assessment or environment scanning is a formal surveillance review of the organization and its environment. All but one of the following should be taken into account by the planning unit. So this is where there's 3 right answers and we're looking for the 1 wrong answer. So just be mindful, be present when you're reading these questions because they can be tricky and you can easily reverse what you're looking for and pick the wrong answer. So all but one of these. Okay, community demography, epidemiology, and the economy. Those things definitely would be and are included when you're doing an environmental assessment or scan of your organization and its environment, its community that it's in and serves. So I'm not thinking A is the right answer. Trends in physician availability. Again, physician partnership, physician staffing is very important when you're doing a formal surveillance or review of your organization within the community. Do you have enough physicians? Do you have the right physicians or the right types of physician specialties? Niche strategies. A niche strategy sounds like more of something that the organization is doing within internally and then projecting that externally. This environment assessment, environmental scanning is more looking into the community as opposed to internally within the organization. Patient community attitudes. I think that definitely should be taken into account when you're planning or doing your organizational environmental assessment and including the community around. So what I'm thinking is C is the obvious wrong answer or least likely to be taken into account when you're planning a scan. C, we're all in agreement. Yes. So I think the key for this question again is external review and niche strategy looks more internally, I think, specific to the organization. Any other thoughts on this question before we move on to the last question for this section. Okay. 10, last but not least, a healthcare facility can best meet its social and economic goals by. Okay, so we're looking at a best answer. So that's going to tip me off that some of these answers are true, but are they the best answer regarding a healthcare facility's goal, economic and social goals? So develop a realistic and coordinated approach to long-range planning. I think that's sounding pretty good right now. So I'm going to keep that top of mind while I read the others. Devoting most of its efforts to the development of efficient operational practices. Well, that word most seems to drive that if you're focused as an organization or as a facility on efficient operational practices, you are going to lose or miss some of the social goals for the organization, because that would just be heavily focused on your economic or your financial. So let's go down to C, see what that says. Having a good public relations program, which will focus the facility in the community. It's kind of an oddly worded answer, but I think this is sort of the opposite of B. Now, this is focusing so much on social goals. It's not really talking about anything economic or meeting those economic goals. And then the last is providing all reimbursable services desired by the community. Well, that would be a good answer, but in the word all is just driving me away from that answer. Best meeting social and economic goals, sometimes that doesn't include doing everything that you possibly could be reimbursed for. So I'm going back to this realistic and coordinated approach to long-range planning. The word long-range planning and kind of seems to work very well with social and economic goals of a facility. So I'm going with A. Looks like we have consensus. Ryan?
It's A.
A. There we go. So again, tricky questions that can have right answers, but is it the best right answer? Those are the hardest for me when I'm doing multiple choice tests. Anyway, any questions? Thoughts on the business section? Strategic planning, business development, contract negotiations, contracted vendors, services, all those topics are going to be key to doing well on the business section. And a broad understanding. Richard?
Yeah, this one also includes statistical approaches and things like that, but there's not any calculation you have to do. It's more on knowing the
Yeah.
right?
No formulas to memorize, thankfully.
I don't have to go back to my 7th grade math nightmares.
Yeah, I think we didn't have any questions today, but in your experience, Richard or Ryan, business ratios.
They're going to be more in finance.
Yeah.
Yeah, more in finance.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
And of course, the test, it's not divided up by section. They're all mixed together. But in terms of your preparation, you're going to concentrate on ratios.
Those financial ratios in the finance. Good. Yes. Okay, well then let's move on to the last part of our closing comments. I just want to say just a few words on behalf of Soul. How we are just so happy that we can collaborate with Cal to offer these sessions to encourage our members to become fellows of the American College of Healthcare Executives, and in that encouragement, providing you tools and resources to do the best you can with that process of taking the Board of Governors exam, which is only one aspect of becoming a fellow, but it is often seemingly the most daunting part of the process. So Sol just is very appreciative of Cal's collaboration over the years to provide these preparation series. And just want to, say that on behalf of Sol, and good luck to all of you taking your test. Ryan, Richard?
Thank you, Mary. I second those sentiments and thoughts. It's great to be able to partner with Soul to reach more of an audience with not only all of California. We have people from around the country who are joining us this session, as well as around the world. So I think it's great to have that collaboration, to have those different perspectives in helping everyone prepare.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we have a few minutes left. Let's see, we have some last slides. Study hints and practical tips. I think this is kind of what this session is all about, as these tips, and reread the questions carefully. I think Richard is my role model for evaluating and examining these questions. So Richard, do you want to say, focus a little bit on this
I think
slide?
if I had to pick one bit of advice for people, I would say don't panic on time. You have more time than you can possibly use for taking this test, and don't feel like you're rushed on anything. Deep breath, you'll get through it, but you will not run out of time doing this. And that also means that if you do get hung up on one question, check it off, mark it off. You can go back to it later, spend the time then, but don't feel like you're getting stressed about one and then you start rushing on the others. Again, plenty of time.
Yes. Low, test taking tips too, as you're going through the test, and it's not broken up into sections where you have all your finance questions together, all your management questions, all your HR questions. So if you're obviously in healthcare, different people are in different aspects of healthcare and probably know some sections better because they just deal with it every day in their day job. But go through and answer the low-hanging fruit questions, the ones that you feel confident with the topic, with the question and answers, and then go back, like Richard said, you have time. Go back to those that are sort of out of your comfort zone, and you really kind of have to drill down and use time to evaluate the question, and use the tips and tricks that are common to any multiple choice test taking.
Yeah, I think that was the one thing when I took the exam that shocked me, was how many I had flagged, but I think that was also good that I flagged those ones, went on to the ones that were a little bit easier to answer, that I could work through quicker, and then devoted more time to those other ones. But like Rick said, you have a ton of time for this test. You don't have to rush through anything. You can take your time and go at your own pace.
And none of us are perfect at everything. You're not going to get 100% on the test. It's okay. You don't need to do it. So, feel okay.
It's pass or fail. There's no grade.
Yeah, but I mean, feel okay with the ones and then work through the other ones, and you're going to get a good percentage of those too. Even if you can eliminate two of the answers and make it 50-50, you're better than you were otherwise.
Exactly. Okay. Any other thoughts on this slide? Again, it's we have talked about this, especially when we're going through some of the regulations in our previous study sessions. We've had topics that deal more with regulation. Remember, it's a national exam. So if you're here in California and you're, kind of ingrained in California regs, always come at the exam questions from a national perspective. Generalized, yes, across the country.
Yeah, and definitely look for those keywords, like we're talking about, is not, all but, those type of words. that stick out in the question. They can a lot of times help you eliminate some answers and kind of narrow down the other ones that you want to really look at and select from.
Yes. Okay, next,
So again, yeah, the score is cumulative, so you're not getting a grade on this. It's pass fail. Don't feel bad if you miss a bunch of them. As long as you pass.
yeah,
And if you don't pass on the first time, don't worry about that either. That's something that happens to a lot of people who take this exam. Just regroup, focus in on the areas that um, you felt kind of the weakest in, and take it again. Especially right now, I think they just extended the waiver to take the exam, so you can always take some time to prepare and take it again for free. They do sometimes offer like a free retake, I believe, as well. Because I know I was intimidated with this test, and I was looking at it and I'm like, well, at least I'll get to retake it for free if I don't pass it on the first attempt. So
They do give you feedback on section
yeah,
by section, what percentage you pass. So that also helps if you don't pass, but at
mhm,
least pass. It's easier to pass the first time.
true.
yes,
Not easier, but it's better. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
okay,
we definitely have the self-assessment tool link in here. Just kind of gives you a breakdown of the categories, what'll be on the test in terms of the amount of each specific area to kind of focus in on. And then what else? Study groups. So definitely, if that's something that helps you, learning in a group, continue on. You can form a study group with Zoom. Now that there's different virtual options, we can definitely send out everyone's contact. I've been BCCing everybody, but I can, send the email out with all the final documents and everything to the entire group so that you all have each other's emails. If you're not interested in that, let me know. I can always include some people in BCC. But if you want to keep in touch with everyone and maybe form a study group, that's a great idea. That definitely helps with preparing. And also, take advantage of the local chapter programming to continue your face-to-face education or qualified education credits. We were just talking about that before the session, how we all have to kind of, our continuing education, make sure that we have our credits for when we recertify. So that's, a continual thing that you'll go through even after certifying. But there is one thing I wanted to highlight, the actual ACHE Virtual Board of Governors exam review courses coming up. There's 14 interactive education credits. You did earn 8 virtual interactive credits through this session, but you can get an additional 14. Those can also be counted towards your general education credits that you need 12 of. So if you overload on the virtual interactive, they also trickle down to the basic general ed ones that you have to have too. So if you're interested in continuing on and seeing it from a different perspective, from the global ACHE perspective, I highly recommend taking this. This virtual one as well. I believe I took the self-paced one. I think this one is kind of like this session was, where it's held live and you can ask questions and
right.
everything.
They call that synchronous learning.
Synchronous,
Yeah,
synchronous learning.
versus asynchronous. Also, yes, that and moving forward, that ACHE has kind of created a new specific category for continuing education credits, which is the virtual um, education credits. You've got face-to-face credits and then the qualified education credits. So there's 3 different types of credits that you'll be tracking for as long as you're a fellow. From once you become a fellow, that is part of the re-accreditation or recertification process at least now it's every 3 years. So that is one thing that comes along with becoming a fellow, is now tracking all these credits year to year.
And I know some of you are looking for loaner books. Nora does have 2 sets, I believe. They're the older version, though. We're working on getting new versions to be able to loan out. But if you are interested in taking some of those books to study, please contact Nora. Her email is below. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to join us today, but she'd be happy to send them out and loan them to you once you've scheduled your exam.
Great. Finally.
So definitely keep us posted. We love success stories. We love hearing that people have taken the exam. We love hearing feedback that you've had from it. Again, if you don't pass on the first try, don't feel bad. Feel free to reach out to us as well, especially if you have certain areas that you want a little bit more advice in. Maybe we can help guide you there. We also do encourage you to keep in touch to help us with this series. There'll be a survey monkey that goes out at the beginning of this week or next week that you'll all be able to take. But once you've taken the exam, have some ideas that you'd like to run by us, feel free to email us and let us know, what you found on the test, what helped you that we went over, and what might be something we should add to our series. We're always looking forward to improving and making sure that we're giving you all the tools and tips that we can to help you succeed. For those that do belong to Cal, our Cal communications team does do a member spotlight for new fellows. So if you do pass the fellow exam, please feel free to reach out to us, and we can get you that questionnaire that Cal communications team has, and get you spotlighted in one of our newsletters that goes out each month. And then see, it looks like we do have
There's
some
a
questions.
question about face-to-face hours. Are you, Leanne, are you in Southern California, where about are you? You said on the West Coast. Northern,
Near
okay.
Sacramento.
So that might be something that Richard or Ryan, you wanna
So there are
address.
two events that are coming up within the next 6 months. There's the annual awards in August that I believe is going to be in Walnut Creek again. You can usually earn, I think, 3 to 6 face-to-face credits with that. It's just a 1-day event that usually starts around 3 p.m. and ends by 8 p.m. You can usually get some face-to-face credits there. We do offer face-to-face. We have different committees on Cal that do different events in specific areas. We're trying to branch it out to where, the northern area of California, Sacramento area, as well as East Bay, South Bay, Central Valley. They do have events that they are promoting, so keep a lookout for those. There is also the Cal Congress that is going to be put on this year, the first year, going to be in October. I believe it's 6 face-to-face credits you can earn through that.
Usually the annual
I was going to write a
conferences.
comment to Leanne, but I figure I'll give it to everyone instead. I'm kind of in a similar position that I'm 2 hours from Sacramento, and I hate doing a 4-hour round trip for an hour and a half of continuing ed. It just drives me crazy. So I look for the places where there's multiple hours in one setting. But you might also look at the 12-unit and 6-unit things that ACHE does around the country on weekends and midweek. What do they call them? I forget the name.
The clusters. Yeah.
The clusters. They're a little more expensive that way, but you can knock it out all in once, one trip. I did one up in Reno once, so it was an easy drive and knocked out 12 units. So things like that, the Cal Congress, are really good ways to get a lot of units with minimizing driving.
And there is ACHE Congress every year, although I know that's crowded, and Chicago is not always everyone's favorite place to go to.
It's gonna be in Texas
Houston
year.
This year, so
or no, next in 2025.
2025, right? Yeah.
Sounds fun.
I don't know if
I remember the only other one I think they've had outside of Chicago was New Orleans, and I went to that one when it was in New Orleans. So I think I am going to put it on my bucket list to go to Dallas next year. Or well, wherever it is in Texas. Is it Dallas or you said
I
Houston?
think
I
it's
forget.
Houston. I think it's Houston. I'll have to double check.
Yeah, just the state of Texas. Houston. That's
Houston.
so Houston, Texas. We're going. Okay, everyone.
Thank you
Last
so
minute.
much.
Thank you. Good
Yeah.
luck.
And keep in touch, keep us posted, please. We love hearing success stories and want to continue to help you out however you need it. We're also available if you need fellow references. Please reach out to that Cal Advancement email and we can help get you set up with that as well. Any final thoughts, Mary or Rick?
Nope.
No.
I just put my email address in there again if anyone needs contact. But yeah, it's been a great session. I've had fun.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.